alaikum. Can everybody hear me well? It's fine, right? So thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the encouragement. And it's actually quite a pleasure sharing this stage with a lot of the great people that came before me. Nadeem was here, so again we heard from Saad. So I think it's really a pleasure for me to be here and an honor. As was introduced, my name is Saad Tawwab. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Samsung Pakistan and Afghanistan. I also looked after the online business, so we will be meeting Daraz and some of the guys as well. Before joining Samsung over the last 1.5 years, I've also worked at Coca-Cola. So that's why even the picture that was there, the lapel that was there, it was a Coke lapel. Somebody messaged me last night कि वो आपने पुराना लगा दिया. I said there has not been a new shoot, so I'm just using that old picture. And then I've also done a bit of strategy. I worked in business development. I've worked in commercial. And I've worked in a few markets like Saudi, Turkey, and stuff. So I have a slightly more wider geographical focus. Today, what I will be talking primarily about is just my love for how can we drive effectiveness in marketing, and actually learning from some of the best in the business. If I could, is this the one? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so what I will talk about is, again, Kamar and Afshin gave me the opportunity to actually go through a lot of the FE's case studies, to review them and actually try to understand what are the few things that come out for the brands which have done really well in the market. And then after that, what I've also done is I've tried to relate it from the learnings from the Edinburgh Bass Institute. These are the people based out of University of South Australia. They've done some outstanding work led by Professor Byron Sharp and some of his accomplices, Professor Jenny, John Dawes, all these people, and you can follow them, and I would encourage everybody just to take notes, and maybe you can follow them afterwards on LinkedIn or other mediums. Then I've also shared a few learnings from System 1 Group based out of England. They do a lot of work with the IPA, Institute of Practitioners of Advertising, and then a few key opinion leaders like Peter Fields, Les Pinney, and Mark Ritz. And so again, I'll try to relate it to some of the things that we will, we talk about from an effectiveness perspective. I'll also try to address a few myths, or not myths, but maybe misunderstandings regarding, rational advertising and functional advertisement versus, should we go for emotions? Is there a way out? I'm not sure. A lot of people think it's a way out. A lot of people say actually there is a way in. So I'll try to address some of these things while we go through this. So moving on. The first thing, again, this is my framework, so I'll just try to put it out over here as well, which talks about creativity via emotions, then longevity in terms of advertisement. The second one is basically having an edge. Nadeem ne bhi iske bare mein baat ki thi. And then leveraging distinctive assets, which was talked in the super discussion as well. And then finally maximizing reach. And what I'll try to do is I'll try to relate it from the learnings, maybe a few learnings from the FEs and a few learnings from the EBI people and the, even people like Mark Ritson as well. So if you can just play this ad up. This is the first ad that I wanted to share. I really like this ad, and I'll talk about why from some of the FE submissions.
मोमो से वेट बाइट खाऊंगा, ये तो कूद जाऊंगा।
जानती वो भी थी मेरी धमकियां झूठी हैं, ये उसकी ममता ही तो थी जो डर जाती थी। वो कहानियां सुनाती भी थी और बनाती भी थी।
फिर शेर आया और सारे जानवर भाग गए।
शेर क्या खाते इतने पावर्स के लिए?
पराठा।
ये उसकी ममता ही तो थी जो मेरे लिए शेर को भी पराठा खिलाती थी। इम्तिहान मेरे होते थे, पर ये उसकी ममता ही तो थी जो रात भर जागती थी। आज भी कुछ भी तो नहीं बदला।
आपको पता है स्पाइडरमैन इतनी पावर के लिए क्या खाता है?
क्या?
पास्ता।
तू हो दुनिया में चाहे जहां, तेरी फिक्र में।
बस शेर की जगह स्पाइडरमैन ने ले ली और पराठे की जगह पास्ता।
ज़माने कई बदले, न बदली ममता न बदले हम, जहां ममता वहां डालडा।
So again, this won a gold award at the FE this year round in the culinary category. Again, the reasons I liked about it, this ad or this submission, is because it's very simple. goes back to something that Dalda has done for years and years and years. Again, jahan mamta wahan Dalda. And it plays on very, very basic emotions. The motherhood, the basic emotions that everybody can connect. And again, that's the first point that I wanted to bring across, was that, it's all about the emotions. Historically, we've talked about, rational advertisement, functional, all these kind of things, but it's mostly about emotions. We'll talk about why, what are the learnings on that. So again, very, very successful campaign for Dalda. The value share went up, and again, it's a long-term share, so over a 1-year period. Again, some of the case studies that I went through for FEs, I looked at the sustained success ones, the success that was a bit long-term rather than, very topical success stories, because I wanted to show something that works over a long period of time, not just at a point in time. The volume growth was there, the usage went up, and the top-up might increase as well. So again, some of the things other than that, what they used was that they actually had multiple copies shot for the same concept. So this is the concept of leveraging different visual assets so that, people don't get bored with the same thing. You actually get, you get the message from different perspective, and you actually keep feeling that it's a fresh message. Moving on, some of the other notable, things that I picked out was this one ad from, I'm not going to run it, it's a really long ad, it's a 5-minute ad, but I think it's something that was really, really heart-touching in terms of how, something which is 50 years old can still sustain, and, how they linked it back to the strength of the steel. And then the second one was the Khushiyan for Shan Foods, jahan Khushiyan manane wale mein shamil kyun nahi. So I think this was a campaign where they talked about the fact that the person who makes all the Khushiyan or enables all the Khushiyan, she's most of the times missing in the pictures that are taken at the key moments. So again, this was also a very notable emotional campaign that I came across. Both of them won gold awards within the campaigns. And I think the last one, we talked about Coke a lot, but I think one of the good campaigns that came out recently was the Why Not Meri Jaan. Because I think we say it a lot anyway. हम लोग जब बात कर रहे होते हैं, a lot of times we say, यार, why not? Why not? So I think it's something that was very insightful, very emotional. And I think the company Pepsi did an amazing job. And also they won quite a few awards, and actually they came out as a marketer of the year at the recent FEs as well. So again, the first thing was emotions. Now, this is, I think, one of the, we talked about it. This is one of the iconic films when we were growing up. Some of the younger people might not know it. But Kal Raat Ko Kashif Abbasi was, in some kind of talk show, and he even was relating some of the dialogues from this. So again, a lot of us can talk about the Maximus Decimus Meridius, Legions of the North, and all those kind of things. But I think one of his key dialogues was, "Are you not entertained?" And I think my kind of relevance over there is that, people, when they switch on a TV or a YouTube or a TikTok, they want to be entertained. And that's our job when we're making an ad. If we make a boring, neutral kind of an ad, we are not delivering on our job. So that's the first thing that I wanted to do, deliver the message, make entertaining ads that people want to watch again and again, and that touch on the people's emotions. Now, what I will do is I will actually reference a lot of the things that I will talk about over here. So again, some of this work is, on this slide is from How Brands Grow. So I'll put it out over there. The reason for that is actually if there are some young people out here and they want to go back and reference it, they can do that. So I think the first thing, we want to generate outstanding creative ideas that viewers notice and process over and over again. And that can only happen when they are entertained. If they are not entertained when they're watching an ad, they will not do this. Just fun fact over there, that only 20% of the ads are actually noticed. The rest are not noticed. So if you make an ad, you spend $300,000, $200,000 making an ad, and if it's not noticed, that's all the money down the drain. So try to make ads which are interesting, people want to view again and again. We had a past worldview which was, everything needs to be rational and emotional, maybe then emotional. The new worldview, as per the research from the Ehrenberg Bass people, is that it needs to be emotional and then maybe rational. The second bit is that it was about message comprehension. Now it's getting more about getting noticed. So at least, you get noticed, that's the key thing. जो हमने थोड़ी सुधीर ने भी सुबह बात की थी. The first job is to get noticed. And then the third one is persuasion. Rather than persuasion is about building and refreshing memory structures. I think the first time somebody sees an ad, it's about building it, and then you keep on refreshing those memory structures. So again, these are some of the evolving concepts in terms of advertisement. And I think the key point is that, I'm sure some of you guys or most of you guys might have heard of System 1, System 2, all the research from Daniel Kahneman. Basically what happens is that we are actively filtering out a lot of the stimulus that we are getting while we are watching any TV or while we are on digital. Our key task is to generate that emotional reaction that actually takes the person to say, hey, I will pay some attention to this, I will watch this. That's the key task of our advertisement, and that can happen through emotions, not through functional hooks or stuff. Now, this slide uses some of the work from System 1, and their key kind of take is that the best emotions which result in uplift of brands comes through when they watch an ad, they either become happy or they're surprised. The key one is the happiness, which has the highest kind of increment in terms of the brand lift. Surprise is the second one, and the rest, things like fear, disgust, anger, contempt, they actually limit the potential of an ad. So what we should be focusing on is, first we talked about emotions, but what sort of emotions? They should be either emotions related to happiness or surprising people. And then what they do is they have a massive research over 50,000 ads that they have tested. And then based on these emotions that they check during the copy testing, they can actually tell you what is the potential, the share gain potential of an ad. So if you score a low, you can actually say gaining share goodbye. But if you are a 5, you can actually expect to gain 3 to 4 share points based on a good ad, provided you run the media well, जो सुबह सुधीर ने भी बात की थी. So again, you can actually look up their work. Some of the ads, you can go to the System website. A lot of their work is free to download as well. Again, the same concept, what you can see over here is that the ad which has a 4.1, sorry, it's a bit smudged, but the ad which has a 4.1 is the ad which has the highest happiness index in terms of the emotions that the people got when they were watching the ad. So again, try to drive happiness or surprise within the ad, because those are correlated with higher business building. One thing that also a lot of times we talk about, so when they're testing an ad, the System 1 people, when they test an ad, they do the testing on short-term effectiveness, and then they also do the testing on the long-term effectiveness. So this chart is actually testing on long-term effectiveness and short-term effectiveness of the Super Bowl ads over the last 4 years. Now what you can see over there, I think there is actually a very strong correlation between long-term effectiveness and short-term effectiveness. So what we should try to do in most of our advertisements is try to think long, so that we can sell in short. So again, Mark Ritson had a statement about this one, that if you want to sell in the short, go long. It will sell in the short, but if you go short, it will not sell in the long. So again, in order to drive effectiveness, share gain, volume gain, try to think long term. And these are the drivers that we talked about, long-term effectiveness, which are, surprise them with emotions or give them happiness when they're watching an ad. The same thing, the same thing comes across when you look at the UK Christmas ads as well. So again, they tested the same thing, very high correlation between the short-term and the long-term effectiveness on both in UK, US. So again, the reason I brought up the UK and US is that just to show that it's not just relevant to one market, or maybe it's just a Super Bowl phenomena. It's a phenomena that goes across different occasions, different time frames. So try to go for emotions, try to build ads which are effective in the long term, and that will work in the short term as well. Now just swinging and actually trying to get some data or maybe a different perspective. So maybe System 1, maybe they have one bias. So again, I just wanted to look at it from a different perspective, that are there other people who are actually talking about the same thing? Are they talking about creativity as well? So this is data which came from Nielsen people, and using the FE data, and also via Professor Mark Ritson. So again, the things that they talk about in order to drive the effectiveness of creative, the first one is context. So are you contextually relevant? The second one is recency. So how recently did you actually see the ad? Are you targeting well? Do you have a brand which has a big brand size? So a bigger brand has higher effectiveness in terms of advertisement. Reach. We will talk about reach towards the end as well, but again, Sudhir Subha talked about it as well, that reach over frequency. So maximize your reach. So that's number one. And then the biggest one in terms of the effective power of creative is the creativity. So again, let's try to make ads which are creative, which are not boring, which touch on emotion. So I'll just maybe repeat this 1 or 2 more times, and then we'll move on to something else. This is again from System 1, and this is actually from a research paper that talks about the extraordinary cost of dull. So, what they have done is actually they have categorized the spending between non-dull, dull, very dull, and extremely dull advertisement coming out of US. So what you see that more or less half of the advertisement budget actually is spent on ads which are like mostly dull. And if you look at 68%, is on dull ads. And the share gain, if you look at it from moderately to non-dull ads, it's actually a double index. So 0.6 is for moderately dull ad, the share gain, versus 1.3 for the non-dull ads. So I think let's not, again, the same thing, don't make dull ads, because if you have dull ads, the cost is tremendous in order to make a dull ad do the same thing that can be done through a non-dull ad. So again, in terms of US, they estimated that it needs to be $189 billion, the total extra cost that you would need for your dull ads to match the non-dull ads. So it's the same thing. This is when they talk about in terms of the emotions that people have, the dull, neutrality is the biggest emotion. And again, a lot of times we see this in our advertisement as well, that, we show people an ad, they're like, okay, whatever. That shouldn't be the case. People should either, be, even if it's like, they don't like the ad, that can at least drive some effectiveness in the short term. But if people are neutral about it, that means that you've actually wasted the money in terms of producing and airing the ad. And these are some of the things that these people talk about in terms of how can you actually make your advertisement non-dull. I think we talked about some of the things in the morning, but again, emotions is there, drama and storytelling. Are we showing real and distinctive character? Is it fresh? Does it leave people with a fresh feeling, nice feeling? So all these kind of things that can help you drive and dial up your advertisements. Again, this was the first chunk that I wanted to talk about, which is basically creativity and having emotions in creativity and making ads which are not dull, which are interesting, which people want to watch again and again. And again, while we talk about, and a lot of times, some of the people like Amar and Adil, we talk about, Byron Sharp and maybe Professor Mark Ritson being at the other end of the thing, on spectrum on different topics. But over here, actually, both of them are on the same page that, you need to have creativity in advertisement, otherwise you're missing your mark. Now, moving on to the second part, again, so this is, a statement that came from Mark Ritson, which is shit that arrives at the speed of shit is still shit. So don't do that. So make good advertisement. Because again, just going back to Mark Ritson again, he talks about the fact that we are too focused on the pipes. We're not focusing on what goes through the pipes. So it shouldn't be shit what goes through the pipes. So let's focus on stuff which is good, which people take notice about. Now moving on to the second bit, which is longevity. And I think this is something which I think most of the people miss. We were just talking about the fact that Pepsi came up with a tremendous platform, which was Battle of the Bands, and then they just killed it. Because maybe the next person who came around, he said, I'll do something new, right? And there's so much money that we waste. Every brand manager that comes in, he wants to make a new ad. Every marketing director, he wants to make a new campaign because we want to put our stamp on the brand. But a lot of time, we are actually wasting money and we are not being responsible with the company's money. So again, we'll talk about longevity now. And, so I'll just, Again, going with Professor Mark Ritson, this is data coming from a company called Analytic Partners. And what they did is they looked at more than 50,000 creatives. And what they found, that out of the 50,000 creatives, only 14 were worn out. The rest were not worn out. So again, the problem of wear out is definitely not of the market. It's actually the market here. It's actually us getting tired of what we are producing, or maybe us not finding enough work, so we have to come up with new advertisements. And this is actually, again, going back to the system one, this is via an article from Mark Ritson. What they did is they looked at ads over a long period of time. So this is the average ad rating of ads, based on the number of airing days. So for example, if they looked at an ad from roughly start, so the average star rating, we talked about the star rating, which is the copy evaluation index, was 2.2. But if you take it up to 350 days, it still says 2.2. So this actually, in a way, I found this to be quite a killer chart in terms of putting this wear out debate to rest, that the wear out actually doesn't happen that well. I know somebody might say that in our market mix modeling, we felt that if you have a wear out, the copy effectiveness starts going down. But that's another topic about how relevant are the market mix modeling and how relevant is the correlation and how well do they take care of all the different factors affecting the business. The same thing, that the last data was for average, right? So average ads in database, 0 to 49 to some other point in time. This is what we call single source data. So star rating, when the thing was first aired in January, Feb 2020, and then maybe something, the star rating after 3 years. What you see is a very strong correlation. Roughly, they say it's a 0.9 correlation. So effectively, the star rating hardly moves over a long period of time. So you could actually, if you make a good ad or make a good campaign, keep on running it. Don't take it off. People don't get tired of it, we do. Again, just looking at a disparate source. Again, I just have this thing. I try to look at things from different angles just to make sure that I'm not being led into one direction by one data set. This is from Kantar. What they also say is that the frequency versus fed up. So fed up is on the y-axis, frequency is on the x-axis. Actually, it's a very flat line. So people are actually not getting fed up with your advertisements. And it's smudged, but it says that similar trends are seen in digital ads across metrics as well. So again, somebody might say, no, it doesn't work in digital because I've heard that before. Actually, it does work in digital as well. So there is actually, so no linear relationship between frequency and fed up. One thing that actually goes up is that with repeated exposures, the brand memorability goes up. And that's the key thing that you want to drive. So whenever somebody sees your ad, they want to actually understand that, which brand is this for? They actually want to recall that. So with repeated exposures, actually your brand memorability goes up. So again, so keep on actually running your ads over a long period of time. So now after the longevity, I'll just quickly shift because in terms of giving time, I'll move on to the leveraging distinctive assets bit. I think we had a very good discussion in the morning when we talked about, from Shahzain, he talked about super leveraging their old ads and stuff. And I think even somebody asked Nadeem a question that, when you're doing Coke Studio, what do you do? So if you look up Coke Studio, what you will see in the background of Coke Studio, you will have the contour bottle, you would have the logos, you will have the color. So all the different distinctive assets that Coca-Cola has are very well represented even in the Coke Studio videos. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to run this ad. I think it's a brilliant brilliant way to use distinctive assets on on an ad which is unbranded.
कैल्शियम और विटामिन डी के इस्तेमाल से अब हर औरत बोलेगी
There are 1,000 ways I can.
A public service message on calcium awareness.
So yeah, this is for CAC 1000, but the reason that they can't show the ad is because of the DRAP guidelines that, actually for a medicinal product, you can't actually call out the product. So the smart way that I think they found around it was that, they branded everything orange, which is the color that you have for CAC 1000. So again, it won the FE, the consumption increased quite significantly. And again, the brand actually grew strongly as well. And then there was a decline in calcium efficiency. So I think that's one of the points that I want to talk about is if you have distinctive brand assets, use them. We had the case in the morning. There were some other, cases that I picked up from FEs where there was very strong usage of distinctive brand assets. We talked about, we had EBM in the morning, so they talked about Super, but I think they came up with Teddy, which is also a very strong distinctive asset. I saw the billboard yesterday that they recently launched the strawberry variant, so they're leveraging this icon very well. Then recently, I think there was an award win for Talo as well. They talked about Amma Talo me pakao. This is a very, very age-old kind of a statement slogan that they have had, so they used it again after quite a long while. Then I think Super, we talked about it, but I think just keeping the same line, that's great, but I think bringing back the old Breathless song, I don't know, from 2005, 6, and putting it on again, I think that's amazing, because everybody still remembers that Upar was the whole song about Super. And then I think by now, Wasim Akram has become a kind of a distinctive asset for Ariel now. So initially when they started it, I used to be in PNG at the time, and then I thought, why he has no relevance with washing and stuff. But now that these guys have had it for like 10, 12 years, and every year he comes in a green coat, washing clothes and stuff, I think he's become a kind of a distinctive asset for Ariel. So as soon as they queue up and you see the green coat and you see Wasim Akram, you're like, okay, Ariel ka ad aa gaya. So that's refreshing, because in the beginning, I talked about it's about noticing, building, and refreshing memory structures. So again, Wasim Akram, I think, does it well. And then lastly, we talked about Jahan Mamta Wahan Dalda, because this is something that, people like us who've grown, we've seen these ads over the longest time. And again, Aziz and these people, they brought it back, and I think that's outstanding. So again, a lot of these brands have distinctive assets. We talked about Coke, the contour bottle, the red color, all the different things, and that were used very well in the Coke studio as well. Now just a few things related to distinctive assets. Again, this work, some of this work is coming from, again, Ehrenberg Bass people, their book about how building distinctive brand assets. So again, they talk about easy brand identification in shopping situations. So that's number one, why you have distinctive assets, that it helps drive recall in the shopping situation. The second one, it helps ad make it through the attention filter, because as we talked, due to the system one, Daniel Kahneman work, we are actually not focusing on ads. Even in the EBI textbook, it says that roughly when you're watching TV, 1/3 of the people are actually watching the ad, 1/3 are passively watching it, and 1/3 are actively canceling the ad. So again, you need to actually get through to maybe the 1/3 that are watching, but what you want to do is you want to get through to the 1/3 which are passively watching it, and these kind of distinctive assets can act as attention filters, right? They can go through the attention filter, especially even if you're just not seeing an ad, but you hear Jahan Dalda, Wahan Mamta, so you're like, okay, Dalda and everything else, so it comes back. And again, I think one of the most important things is that it's an alternate way to represent a brand, not just a brand. Because normally, हम जब कहते हैं कि branding होनी चाहिए, तो we think about the name, Coca-Cola, yeah, whatever brand. It's a bit difficult to fit the brand everywhere. So that's the gap that a distinctive asset can fill. That wherever you cannot place your brand, you can actually place a distinctive asset, because that gives you a bit of the flexibility. It would not break your storyline. If something is in the background, it will not break the storyline. You can actually use the same thing in multiple platforms. And then there's this whole thing about neurological diversity. If you show the brand from different perspectives, you're still reminding the people, but they're not getting bored. So, for example, if you talk about Coke, you could have the Coke brand, but you could have the contour bottle, you could have the color. All of these things remind you of Coca-Cola, but you're not bombarded with the same thing again and again. So again, that's a smart way of doing branding while not doing it. Again, one point I wrote over there, of course, the best thing is that you put your brand in there, but again, in most situations, it's not that easy. Now, using some data from the Distinctive Brand Asset book as well, what we see is that in terms of online banner advertisements, the recall actually went up just using brand if you have visual distinctive asset, maybe something like a Teddy, or a tagline distinctive asset, maybe like Jahan Mamta Wahan Dalda. So basically for both brand users and non-brand users, when you add a distinctive brand assets, the ad recall goes up significantly. Now just again, a kind of controversial thing a lot of people talk about, we also suffer from it, that we are doing over-branding. So just wanted to discuss that as well, that in terms of the EBI people, they did a testing. In terms of what is the, how does the frequency of the brand, how does it affect the liking of a copy or an ad? What they saw was that in terms of frequency, you went from 1 to 5. Frankly speaking, the liking score, remained pretty similar. Similarly, if you talk about verbal frequency, it remained similar. Same thing, again, sometimes we say don't show your ad too early because that will, people will not watch the ad. What you see over here that, based on the entry timing of the brand into the copy, really no difference in terms of the liking score. And the amount of time that a brand stays in the copy, again, very minimal difference. So again, some very, very, this was quite eye-opening for me that, we should brand it as much as we can without actually going, overboard in the sense that, if we can't put the name in there, let's put the distinctive asset over there. And another thing is the level of branding also does not affect the virality of a video. So again, some similar data from the Edinburgh Best people. So the least viral videos, time of brand appearance was roughly 34% of the total time. Most viral brand videos, 39%. So not a lot of difference in terms of the percentage of time that was spent in terms of viral videos. And in terms of positive emotion, number of times brands show, actually for the brands, videos which showed more of the brand, the positive emotions were higher. So again, we grew up with a lot of these myths that, don't do too much branding, it will hurt your brand. Maybe we can debunk that via some of the data that comes out from some good research people. And the last bit I just wanted to talk about is, how do we maximize the reach? And I think Sudhir talked about it. Sudhir talked a lot of the things that I talk over here, but I'm just maybe in a way, he was the opening player and I just, backing it up with the data. So this is actually, when I said I went through the FE case studies, I actually did. So I read something like 60, 70 case studies again. So again, and I try to look for the common patterns. And so these are the ones that I picked up, some of the sustained success or the category success. What you see, most of these brands went for mass advertisement. So they were not very targeted. They were mass in the sense that, 70 to 80%. This is actually TV spends out of the, there's a media addendum in the FEs right at the end. So you can actually pick out, some people don't fill it at times. I don't know why, but some people don't. But the people who had filled it out, what was the percentage of spent on media, TV, on maybe out of home? But if you see most of the brands who have done well, and I put in the awards, I didn't want to put the names, but the awards over here, it's between 60 to 70% of the money actually goes to the mass media. So I think there is a whole lot that we can do going mass, not going too targeted. And the reason for going mass, and I don't have a slide over there, is again going back to the key thing, that the first thing that Sudhir talked about, which was penetration, which is the key thing that Edinburgh Bass people talk about, which is penetration. It's about penetration, it's not about frequency. The penetration difference between a bottom brand and a top brand is roughly 10x. The consumption difference or the frequency difference between a bottom brand and a top brand is like 1.2 times or whatever. So so the growth comes through penetration, and the penetration comes through more people. And there's another research from Edinburgh Bass which says that 66% of your brand growth comes from non-users. So you would use your non-users through a brand broad reach, not via, very targeted reach. So again, we should try to go for, synergy within our media. We should have broader timing or context. We should have enhanced repetition. Enhanced repetition, I talked about the fact, the same way that Dalda made 4 ads. So if you run one ad, that's one ad, but then if you run the other one, that's enhanced repetition because the mind assumes it to be a different new ad, but it still registers that the same kind of context. And then finally, try to make neuro-rich ads, which are, use the colors, the distinctive assets, so that actually it's not just one stimuli which is hitting you, actually it's multiple stimuli which will hit you. And again, something that Sudhir talked about, and again, this is coming from research from Edinburgh Bass people, it's not a linear relationship in terms of OTS and the increased propensity to purchase. It's actually not a S-curve as well. What it is, it's actually a kind of a convex thing. So basically, the first time you see an ad, that's the biggest jump that you see in terms of your propensity to buy a product. The second one is lower, and then the third, fourth one are even lower. So again, what you should go for, again, was Sudhir, I think somebody asked the question in the morning that, you put it up in a village or whatever. So if somebody sees it the first time, that's the biggest jump that you would see. in terms of your propensity to buy a product. And again, this is what they recommend, that in terms of, you have a total audience, then you have a brand audience. Rather than going for, overlapping audiences, try to spread out the audience. Go for multi channels. So go for TV, online, out of home. But the objective should not be to build frequency. The objective should be to build reach, so that actually you reach everybody once. And again, once, what happens is that once you have multiple mediums, multiple awareness mediums, the first one, if its index is 100, the second one is 134. So basically, over a period of time, it builds up, the overall effectiveness of your advertisement. And this is actually, so we're in good time. So I think this is the last slide. The first thing that is predictive of your growth is media, in terms of, there's a whole concept of ESOF, which is excess share of voice. So your share of voice, as per the work of Les Binet, Peter Fields, System 1, Institute of Practitioners of Advertisement, your share of voice should be higher than your share of market. So they call this concept excess share of voice, or ESOF. So that's ESOF is roughly 27% predictive of the uplift in media. And if you combine that with media and creative, the uplift is around 48%. And again, I've written this formula, which comes from the long and the short of it, which is basically 0.05 into ESOF. So if you have a 10% excess share of voice, all things held constant, we call it ceteris paribus, your share should go up 0.5%. So so try to go for excess share of voice as well. So this, in a way, is my conclusion. So let's make more emotional and less bad shit content, encode it with brand codes, deliver it to more people, and run it for longer. So thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, please.